I'm Michael Reese.
And I'm Woods Davis.
And this is the Digital President Podcast.
We've cracked the code for generating customers online for every business model.
In fact, we wrote the book on it.
We've built multiple multi-million-dollar businesses in as little as 90 days. And the one truth that we discovered is
the best business model is doing what you love and living your life by strategy.
You truly can follow your passion and create the life of your dreams,
as long as you have the right strategy.
If you're a real estate agent and you'd like to learn how you can partner with us to help you implement our strategies and systems in your business so you can make a lot more money and have a lot more time freedom, all without ever paying us a penny or giving up a percentage of your commission, go to partnershipdetails.com and schedule a call with us today. While it's fresh in your mind, go to partnershipdetails.com. Now on to the podcast.
So what's happening, man? How you doing?
Doing good, man. You get that move all knocked out?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'm excited to drop another episode of the Digital President Podcast. You know, for me, man, one of the things that's been, you know, this morning when Sammy showed up, he showed me a text message of someone who read the Digital President book. And I think one of the things that I'm, you know, most aware of is, you know, really the concept of being the digital president. And this guy sent him a deal and he said something like, this book is fire, right? And I think when people actually, you know, one of the problems that people have is they don't complete books, right? And so for me right now, I'm reading a lot, you know, reading, taking notes, journaling, learning, you know, being an extensive learner. And I think that's important, man. I think it's important for people, especially during times of uncertainty, to really take the time to focus in on, you know, what skill am I acquiring? What am I working on? You know, how am I becoming better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting last week, you know, I feel like we're kind of little digital president makers. A lot of what we do is helping other people kind of execute the digital president, I guess, strategy, you know, becoming content marketers. And last week we have like 4 people getting ready to launch webinars as kind of their funnel where they're like teaching other people, you know, their expertise. And so what's really interesting is like, you know, the amount of effort that it takes to really learn and become an expert on a topic and then develop those skills. But then not only that, like what we really talk about in Digital President is learning how to develop your own philosophy. Like as you execute something, like when you learn a new skill, and if you're really focused on doubling down and learning a new skill, as you go out and execute it, like you're going to get your own takeaways and you're going to get your own philosophy on how things should be done. And what's really valuable is like when you just multiply what you've learned and what you've done and what you've taken away from your executing whatever strategy or tactic you're learning, and then teach that to other people. And so
I think, you know, I believe that people have ADD and they'll never do it, because I'm telling you, again, this morning I went for a run and everything you just said was in my mind, knowing we were going to do the podcast. First of all, I was recording a TikTok. And on the TikTok, I was talking to a guy about his story. And he said to me, you know, I want to give you full disclosure, but I've been to jail. And I was having a Zoom call with this guy. And I explained to him about repurposing his story. Well, Jessica, our editor, edited that into a headline that said, I've been to jail, as a hook. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, I get a call from a guy who just got released from jail, watched the TikTok, went to my set up a strategy call, and wanted to learn more about digital marketing. And he's called me 3 times on my cell phone. This guy's like, yeah, I did 51 years. You know, it was something like
51 years.
No, it was something like that. I think he was locked down for 30 or something like that.
Yeah. Wow.
I got another call with him. I went ahead and you know, I was like, well, are you in real estate? You know, and he was like, no, but you know, I want to write a book. I got a new record label. He was telling me all of his ideas from prison. I gave him, you know, a little bit of my time, probably 20 or 30 minutes out of, you know, I think this guy could use a little helping hand and perspective. Then he called me again the next day. This actually happened last week, but my point is that you can attract whatever content you're putting out. But the problem is this, I'm working with Sammy, and I'm constantly telling Sammy the importance of taking notes, right? Writing down your ahas. And more importantly, as you're learning, could you go home and teach it to your son, right? Like there's 4 levels of knowledge. There's the level of learning and understanding, but then could you simply transfer that knowledge to somebody else and teach it?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I see is that I'm telling you, I'm watching. I would say maybe it's just me, but most people that I'm around have ADD, meaning they have this unbelievable sense of urgency just to do things, to feel productive, but very, very, very little into like taking the time to step back and look at 1,000 or 2,000 foot view. And I think that's what's important is, with Life by Strategies, and specifically, I think the guy who read the book, he read the first chapter. Because here's what happened, Woods, and this was cool too. The guy who bought the book was in Florida. He sends Sammy a picture of the book with our signatures. And I said, Woods must be selling like books that we signed like out of the house with our signatures. He must have a stack of books. I was like, where did this guy get a link? Because it was my signature.
Right.
And then he told Sammy he bought it used on Amazon. So someone bought the book and then resold the book on Amazon as a used book. And I thought that was kind of interesting, to just be thinking about, in the grand scheme of things, just the power of the internet, the power of content, the power of the book. Not only we've always said, you can write a book and it can be given to somebody else. But in this situation, it wasn't a book, just a book. The guy was enjoying the book. He was obviously through the first chapter. He was consuming our philosophy that we shared, Life by Strategy. And going back to the point is, as I'm telling you, and it's almost like weird, but I'm observing a lot of people around me, and they're simply just doing what they've always done. There's no real clear strategic initiative to advance to any other level, to remove. They might have problems, but I think people need to be more strategic about their life. And I think that's, that it's not about, people. I think a lot of people are being motivated, are persuaded by fear and uncertainty. But when you have a clear plan, it's not about changing the goal. It's maybe changing the strategy.
I think that's a good point. I think the paradigm that you come from when you're putting together your strategy of why you're doing anything, right? It really comes down to like, what is your motivation for, for anything that you're doing in your business, any tactic, anything that you're doing. And if it flows out of Life by Strategy, like you're really clear on the purpose, then you come from a place that's more genuine. It's more motivated by like love and excitement, enthusiasm, and other people kind of feel that too. Like if you're just going through the motions, and I felt like this, bro. I felt like, you get into that stage or where you're in business, you always feel like you're not doing enough, right? You always maybe feel like you're behind, especially if you're a big thinker and you have big goals. You always kind of feel like, man, like there's all of these things that I'm not doing. But if that becomes just your motivation, and like you said, you're kind of operating from that place of fear, it's almost like it just motivates you to take a little quick action without having any real strategy behind it, without having any real purpose behind it. And then I don't think you really can even get the results that you want when you do stuff like that. And I've experienced that personally, is like, I guess it really does come down to getting real clear about your why for why you're doing anything, and starting with that, like what we call is Life by Strategy of like, man, how does everything that you're doing align to that greater purpose and how you want to live your life? What's the bigger strategy? And like, what do you think? Like, I mean, obviously I fell victim to that. I understand that what that ADD feels like. I feel like I've got ADD about as bad as anybody. What do you feel like has been in your life, like one of the secret powers of being able to, you know, to spend the time that it takes to get really clear on your life by strategy and make sure that what you're doing is aligned to that?
Betting big on yourself, I mean, it just puts you put yourself in a situation where you can't afford to lose. And so the only way to, you have to grow to become what you want to become. And so for me, my personal experience started with awareness. I certainly had ADD, looking for my keys, looking for my shoes. And so I personally, whether it was not ADD, it was being conscious of one area in my life. So the first thing I learned real quick was if things don't have a place. Now that seems that, but you think about that. I'm not saying things have to have a place. You have to have a system for finding things. So it's really the way that you do anything is, do you have a system for it, or do you do it different every single time? So my wife, we made this amazing recipe. I'll put a link in the description, but we made our own custom Chipotle. It was there's a YouTube channel about a guy who cooks like Chipotle. He worked at Chipotle, and so I've made his recipe and I made it. And my wife was talking about how she said, Mike, is this true? Or we have friends visiting. She said, Mike, is this true? You don't want to skip, like Mike doesn't want you to skip one step in the ingredients. And I was walking outside and they were talking about, like when they cook and why they don't like to cook and having to measure, teaspoons, tablespoons, everything being right. And I said, yeah, I said, I want to see if I can do it, if I can make it just like theirs. I don't want to reinvent the Chipotle recipe. And so if it says 4 cloves of garlic diced, I don't want to improvise with garlic powder, right? I want to dice for it. And so, for me, again, it's being aware about, you can have systems. So what I did, most recently was and I did this yesterday, Woods, and I was going to send it to you. I might have. I saw a reel and it was a camera guy and it showed, show me one thing you spent way too much money on, but you don't care. Like that was like the background audio.
Yeah.
And it was his organized camera wall.
Hmm.
Only reason I stopped on it is I thought it was guns. I was like, dang, that dude has an amazing backdrop in his office. Look at all those guns. As they focused in on it, dude, he had a spot for everything. It was beautiful, right? And one of the things that I did as I started taking video more serious, looking for this adapter. Where's my 4K cam link? Is the camera charged? All of those things, I don't have those problems. I learned how to name my folders. So my folder names are named by day. I had to start creating these systems. And then all the equipment that I use most frequently, the 80-20 rule, I created a place in my office where so I have a podcast and then I have a rant style video. And that equipment is all put back together every day in the same place. And everything is placed on the charger when we're done. Everything is recharged. So nothing is uncharged. But if you show up to shoot video and your stuff's not charged, or you forgot your card, or, those little things happening to you, I think it's when you value your time or you value your money, you get more organized. And getting more organized actually gives you your time back 100%. I know where my golf cart keys are right now. But before I had awareness, I had spent hours looking for my golf cart keys. Now I have a system of I have 3 places they can be, and I put them back. Now there are times where somebody else grabs those keys and puts them in a place they're not supposed to be, but I know that one spot. My wife puts them in a drawer in the kitchen, and when they go there, they're either in one of my 3 spots, here, or they're in the drawer, right? Mm-hmm. And, same with my mail, Woods. Like my mail, I literally had taken an entire day off and wrestled down a system for my mail. And I think that in your life, whether it's content, whatever it is, whatever you're doing with your time, when you get more organized around that, that's just a little way to start exercising that muscle, right? It's a real good feeling to be like, oh, I know where the golf cart keys are. We can go. It's not going to be like those old times where give me a second to find them, right?
Mhm.
And then you start seeing the benefits of that. Then I took it to grocery shopping, right? I created a master list of every grocery in my house. I don't just write it on a piece of paper and strike through it. I use a deal that actually is a system that once I mark it done. But when I want to make a list, I go to my master list. I have a list for that. So I think there's systems, tools, and processes out there that you're either doing that you haven't defined and created, or that someone else has already defined and created that you can borrow and become more productive. And in becoming, I think ADD is a lack of productivity, right? Meaning you're doing this, you don't finish, you're doing that, you don't finish, you were supposed to do this, but you forgot and you went ahead and did that. So it's all about increasing your personal productivity by organizing yourself, because you don't have the time to waste, or you don't have the money to waste.
Yeah, I think one thing that, that makes a lot of sense to me is the building those systems. Like, for me, I guess the start of getting clear and getting organized is recognizing, okay, this is something that I want to focus on, and then dropping that time in the calendar. But what I've recognized can be some of my challenge sometimes is just leaving the spot in the calendar and then not building the system. If there's a recurring thing that's happening over and over and over, like I've recognized, like there's like 3 videos that I need to shoot right now that will be little mini systems that will like eliminate probably, 3 hours out of my calendar every week, right? Because those are repetitive tasks that are just in my calendar that are happening, that I'm doing over and over again, that really, like I said, could be taken care of with just taking the time to shoot 3 videos. And so now that becomes kind of the next thing is dropping those videos in the calendar, and 100 they're not in my calendar. So this is a good little a good little reminder, good little gut check to like get those systems in the calendar, to create that space, to be able to be more organized. Because I think the big challenge that a lot of people have, and myself included in that bucket, is like when you start feeling your time getting sucked by the whirlwind of the business. For me, I start feeling like, I just start feeling like, man, there's something that's got to be done. There's got to be a better way. And that's usually kind of like a trigger, that, man, I need a system to automate something. I need help.
So let me ask you a question. Here's a real example conversation I think will be value to all the listeners. I want to ask you a question. Yep. If you knew that you were going to die on Friday, what would be your HLA? Your
my highest leverage activity would probably, I'd probably be going back through. I need to update my will. I haven't updated my will. I did recently update all of my insurance policies, which was something that was just like a nagging thing. And I knocked that out. But I definitely, I would be looking at my will. Golly, I would even, my will's not even updated with like my revenue share to where that would be passed down. Golly. So yeah, I'd be getting really
so what I tell, what we got into talking about inheritance tax, death tax, and the individual I was talking, they have an insurance policy, but they didn't understand the death tax. And I said, if you died tomorrow, based upon what you have saved and what your beneficiaries of your life insurance policy would get, it looks to me like the thing that would cost you the most money is death tax, because the beneficiary is not a trust, and it's an individual in their situation. And it takes 6 months to season in order to take advantage of being able to, have somebody be able to be a trust, be the beneficiary of an insurance policy. And I share that with you. It's because, a lot of people don't do those things, specifically those things, because they don't have things prioritized. You made me think of this because my explanation to him was my identity is different. My identity is built around being responsible and sophisticated, right? Like, not like I want to do what the guys I admire do, right? Like my buddy, first thing he told me, you don't have irrevocable, not a non-grantor, but a irrevocable trust, right? And he was like, man, and those are the types of things when you get around people that have the things that you want in life, they've accomplished the things, and being able to really get a clear plan on where your blind spots are. Some people, they're on their workouts, right? They're on their workouts, but their financial situation, not their income, but just if something happens, they're not on that.
Right.
And so the question is what I was telling him. And I said the reason why is because I said, I believe that all of that can be tied back to the identity and the narrative that you've painted for yourself, whatever that is. If your identity is tied up, because back in the day, my identity wasn't about being organized. My identity is now my identity, because I couldn't change my behavior because of my identity. I got good friends that their identity, the way that they see themselves in the world, caused them to have bad habits that they can't shake. They can't shake their bad habits because they can't change their identity, because at some point when they were a kid or growing up, they had some sort of possibly insecurity where they had to create an identity for them to be accepted, for them to feel value from themselves, right? Like they felt valuable if other people treated them this way. So they started to create these habits around being that way. A lot of it's that guy that will do anything. Like, oh, yeah, he'll jump off the house into the 3 foot of the pool. Yeah. He's crazy. Yeah. Oh. So now his identity is, I'm the crazy one. What you got for me? What you got for me, right? I'm the crazy one. But really, you're the dumb one. You ain't crazy. It's called dumb, right? And, like, would you want your son to jump off the house in 3 feet of water? No. Then why the hell would you do it? You got a kid and you got to live to provide for him. Have you taken the time to realize you're an adult now, right? And so, like, a lot of the times people get stuck in their identity. And so your original question was, for me, it was unnatural. It was getting awareness around a lot of things. I mean, and that even goes back to the great, introducing running into my life, right? When I met Goggins, and I felt the identity. I felt the shift. We created names for it. And when I felt that shift, it made it way harder not to run. Mm-hmm. Like I went from struggling to run, to go outside, get 3 miles, to being like, let's hit 10, let's hit 15. Because as my identity shifted, my behavior shifted. And the identity I had was, no, we do hard things. And when it's hard, we do another lap. When it's hard, that's how powerful those stories are that we create amongst ourselves on how we perceive ourselves. And so I believe that some people, they're just trying to make a dollar, right? And if you don't have, then that's a very dangerous place to be, because you might do things that you shouldn't do for $1. My explanation to my buddy who traveled with me last week was my observation of Tony Jerry, who wrote Strategic Parenting for his daughter, who made him lay out what her perfect husband would do, and the things that would be unacceptable for a man to do. But if she builds that identity for herself at a young age that says, I'm not marrying a guy who, cusses at me. Well, if she builds that, and that's reinforced in her identity at a young age, and she's out one night with on a first or second date, and a guy, that first time they cuss at him, that subconscious is going to say, whoa, 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 whoa. You're the guy that I don't marry. Mm-hmm. I see where this is going, because somebody took the time for her to create a vision for herself, specifically far enough out into the future, that gave her filters and things to be, and also the identity of her perfect self, right? How are you going to be? Where are you going to go? And I think that those are the things that when you haven't taken the time strategically to define who you're going to become, 3 years from now, I said 3 years from now, and I have it on my video, on my desktop, but I videoed a guy we started working with, Sammy, and I took a camera and I said, talk to yourself 3 years from now and tell me where you're at, right? And if you go back and look at Mr. Beast's video where he does his first video and he said, hey, I'm in high school right now, and one day, I guess I'll be 5 years, I'll be out of high school, I'll be here. Hopefully I'll have 1 million subscribers, and he's talking to his future self, but he was able to see his future self that allowed him to build the identity and the behaviors of who he was becoming. And so he was able to pursue on a daily basis, building and seeking and acquiring those skills and the knowledge that it took, because he saw that what he wanted to become. And I think that's the thing. If for some reason, I think if somebody said that they're having a challenging time, they might be having an identity crisis. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like they have the foot in on who they want to be, what their potential is. But their other foot is still doing all the same old stuff that's holding them back from being there. And so they got 1 foot out on moving to their best version of themselves, and another foot in, I would say embedded and potted in a lot of bad things. And so you have to attack those things. You have to attack the story, right? It's like you can't go watch Jesse Itzler speak and then him tell you about his story about why he put the water hose up, right? And then him give you the principles of how that impacted the rest of his career and being successful, which is always put the hose up, always put things away. Like that's who he is. And then you have other people, it's like the stuff catches on fire, right? It's like you go in behind them and like everything they had yesterday sitting over here, over there, they're like, and in their identity, there is no identity crisis because they have no vision of who they are, who they want to become, or and that's what J. Abraham would say is, how do you become great when you don't know what greatness looks like? Because a lot of us, our only vision for ourselves is the vision that we've seen for the people around us, or the vision we saw from afar of the outcomes, but not the behavior, not realizing, man, that you really do that every day? Huh. No wonder you're so successful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that, dude. I mean, I literally so I'm doing pre-marriage counseling with my fiance, which I think everybody should do, right? I mean, it's incredible. And one of the exercises that we were doing was just like write down the 10 things that you can't live without. And my number one thing was a vision, a purpose, and specific goals for my life. And I just realized, just how important that was. And it just goes back. And me and you've talked about that scripture, man, where there's no vision, the people perish. But I love what you said about that vision should not just be like it should be of the life that you want, but really the person that you are becoming, or the person that you have to become in order to have the life that you want. And that's harder than just being able to kind of like set all these maybe like materialistic benchmarks or numbers. The problem with numbers is you just always chase numbers, and then you hit the numbers, and then the numbers keep getting bigger, and then it's like just this never ending thing, right? So, really understanding like the person that you have to become in order to hit those goals, in order to like fulfill that vision for your life. Like what would you say has been some of the, like when you felt, incongruent with your, with your like identity, or are you like what do you feel like you do?
I told, well, my biggest thing was the story that I was saying when I first became a father. I started running into challenges of balancing the time because I was still living transactionally to some degree. And so I remember little things that, I was wondering, wondering if there was a book on it, because it was real as a new father, feeling like in my identity and in how I identified with myself, the psychological triggers, that I need to do these things. But as an entrepreneur, knowing that what it takes to be successful. And it was one day, man, that I realized that I was wrong, because I thought I was so right. I thought I was so right on what my definition and story of a good father was. But when I changed that story, it allowed me to go back to being productive like I needed to be in order to, when I reframed what a good father really was, right? Like, like there's a lot of people that, they ain't got their SHIT together, and they're overcompensating, to go build a sandcastle, right? But that guy in Afghanistan ain't building a sandcastle. He might be hiding behind one, but he ain't building one. He's at war trying to provide for his family. And as you're escalating and moving up the economic status ladder, right? It becomes harder, because now you want to buy everything for your kids. But now, a buddy of mine who I respect a lot is visiting me. And, one of the things with me and my wife is she goes, I thought this was a huge lesson for me yesterday. But when one of my kids said, shut up to the other kid. And my wife said, upstairs in your room, you lost your iPad. And I was like, no. And so I made the comment to my friend. I said, that's what she does. She goes straight for the jugular. She gives him no warning, blah, blah, blah. And he said, and he's a solid person. And he said, well, sometimes they should know the rules, and there's no more warnings, right? If they know they're not supposed to say that and they break the rule, if you're always giving them a warning. And I was like, you know what? I never thought about that. They do know that we don't use the word shut up, and we don't say it to our brother. And there's no reason why they should be able to get a warning every single time. But for me, like, I had this story of like, man, you're taking his iPad. Now he's going to be upset for the rest of the day or for the next 90 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And so, I struggle with that. My outcome is, do I want my kid going around in school and telling people to shut up, especially his friends and family? No, I want my kids to be respectful, mature for their age, loving, caring, these words, but without consequences. It's hard to develop those characteristics without rules, and without the constant reminder. And I think that's, it's like a kid with behavioral issues. It's poor parenting, right? It always comes back to leadership. If you're, at some point you chose to be lazy, you chose to let them get away from it. And then, a lot, and a specific friend of mine, they ended up in a terrible relationship. But it's because they let things happen. They were optimistic. They had no boundaries. They had no guidelines. They had no identification. I mean, if you look up the word identity, it's personal identification. It's a psychological term. If you teach people the way you want to be treated. If you're not being treated the way you want to be treated by someone, it's because you accepted it, because you have agency and control of your life. And, why would you not want to live a better life? But a lot of the times, I'm telling you, you don't realize it until you realize, what changed it for me was, imagine if every bad habit you had, your top 5 bad habits, if they were guaranteed when your kid turned 21, they adopt the same habits and they have them for the rest of their life, right? Whether that's eating chips and getting overweight. So in order for you to help the person you love, maybe love more than yourself, become the best version, could you reframe that into understanding that they are going to be you? They are going to, I'm not going to get into the specifics because I don't want anyone to watch this and think I'm talking about them. But, there's people who have imprisoned their children with their bad behaviors. And, I feel like I should characterize now because everyone's going to think I know he's talking about me. But I'm talking about me. If I leave my stuff laying around the house, my kids are going to lay their stuff around the house, right?
Yeah.
If I don't put my dish in the dishwasher, they're not going to put their dish in the dishwasher. if they get in my car and it's a pigsty, when they get a car, it's going to be a pigsty, right? And those are just, so like when you really think of yourself and becoming the best version of yourself,
right?
For me, it's understanding, in my identity. I mean, I have a goal. My clear goal is to, be able to raise my children. I would say my boys, but I got a little girl now, but to raise my children to make the right decision when I'm no longer here. And so, well, how can they do that if while I am here, they just continuously watch me make bad decisions, to some degree, whether that's not being able to control my emotions and lashing out and, being hard to be around. So everyone in the house thinks they have to walk on eggshells. Now I gave them that for their future life and probably their kids' future life. And I probably got it from my dad or vice versa, my mom. So I think it's just really, really important to understand, who it is you are and who are you trying to become, and learn and knowing that you can be whatever it is that you want. And if there's and when I say it's, what I'm not saying is becoming somebody else. What I'm saying is becoming the best version of yourself. Right. And I think all of that starts with a level of awareness and prioritization. And I think it starts with one thing. I think you start with one thing, and then the second, then the third. But you start with, if it's, if you got a stack of mail like this that hasn't been filed in your house, your finances and stuff like that might not all be in order. You might have there's a high probability that you got a low credit score. People who have everything organized probably have a higher probability when it comes to their bills and files and, stuff like that, to pay stuff on time, maybe even before time. But if you ain't got a system for, I know this doesn't matter probably to most of our audience, but, I got a friend who has a terrible credit score. And I thought for a second, how am I going to teach my kids credit score, right? Like, how do I teach them that? Because, later on in life, that's a huge, huge thing that some of us don't get taught anything. And so we damage it for $60 or $170, at a young age, and then live with the consequences. Obviously, those problems have solutions, but, what if you could just learn from someone else's mistakes, from good leadership and mentorship, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Excuse me. And I think the only way you do that is by asking the question, what is your parenting style? What type of parent are you going to be? 10 years from now, what's going to be the relationship with your kids? Why are they going to respect you? What would they say what would your kids say is your biggest problem? What would your kids say is the one behavior that you do that, makes it difficult on them? Or anything like that. And then what would they say, honestly? But before you say that, is what would you want them to say? Would you want your kids to say, like, well, my dad's loving and, caring and do anything? What is that? And I think that's the power of identifying. And, I think it's like having no goal. It's like watching two guys with no competition, no goal. They're just playing basketball versus two guys trying to beat each other to 21. When you really, really put some intention, and you say, you know what, here's my intention and here's where I'm lacking, and you do those things, I think that's where change starts to happen, is awareness and desire around becoming better. And so if you're running around with the chicken with your head cut off, if you're flipping people, if you flip somebody off in the last 2 years, you probably need to read a couple books, because you probably don't got control over your own emotion, right? Like if you're flipping people off still, your kids have probably seen it. They're going to probably flip people off. We don't know the butterfly cause effect if they flip off the wrong person and end up getting hurt, but learned it because my dad flipped off people in the car when he got frustrated. It's like, it's like getting having that, for me, that's having the responsibility of being, why I'm here and what I'm here to do. And, I never sold real estate to make money. I did it to provide, to live a better life. And, how can you, what is that? That's what Life by Strategy, kind of means to me, is taking the time to be strategic on what your life would look like in the event you were living your life, your perfect day, and becoming your best self.
Yeah, that's really starts to bring a lot of clarity in too. I mean, since you mentioned a real estate business, I mean, think about what does your business have to look like for you to live that perfect day, for you to be doing your highest best. You know, we talk about like, you know, doing revenue generating activities, making sure you're doing your HLA, your high leverage activities, your highest and best use of your time. You know, it's probably, you know, looks different than it's number one, you're going to have people around you, right? You're going to have other people assisting you in building the type of business that you want. So, you know, what does that even look like? When you start to kind of get a vision for what you want your life to look like, what's the life team look like? What are all the pieces, the systems that need to be in place? What are all the people that need to be in place around you to support that? And man, without that, it's going to be a lot of wheel spinning. And I think you experience iterations of that, right? Like sometimes, you know, I think early on in business, I know for me personally, it was like, you know, you hire a lot of people because you're maybe not as strong at system building. And so you know, the first system you learn how to build is, you know, hire somebody and tell them, hey, your job is to handle all this, right? So that's like kind of building a people system. And then you start to learn how to like, you know, build different systems for that are more, you know, less people dependent, more system dependent. But you know, just starting to think down that road is kind of like the most important thing. And hopefully this podcast will maybe motivate some listeners. I know it's kind of motivated me a little bit to just refocus on my life by strategy, you know, always be checking like, okay, what's the vision? What, you know, how is my life supposed to look? Am I living up to that? Where are my gaps? Where am I falling short? What do I need to focus on this week in order to help fill those gaps? And so, you know, hopefully this is giving people the same awareness that it helps me with.
Yeah, for me, it's right here, bro. It's right here. It's looking out at the year and not thinking of today. I literally woke up yesterday and I was planning November and December. Strategic is looking at the long game plan, not last minute. You know, I have my flights booked. I already have my flights booked for October, November, December, kids' birthdays, sporting and in that calendar, bro. I put effort in. The best man at my wedding is here as a result of me reaching out and calling him. The kid I grew up with that I lived with in high school will be here next week because I reached out and called him. One of my other best friends when I was in elementary, you know, I had a phone call with him the other day, but I took the time to reach out to those people that I hadn't spoken to a while. I thought about what my year looked like, who were the people that I would love to connect with that I haven't connected with in a long time, and made it happen. You know what I mean? And, you know, we're over here listening to songs, you know, that we used to listen to in high school, having great conversation, living, you know, and enjoying each other's company, you know, seeing his children that I haven't seen in, you know, maybe 15 years, you know, since, you know, they're in juniors in high school. I haven't probably seen them since they were 4 or 5 years old. And it's just living with intention. You know, those things happened as a result of me sitting at this desk and thinking about this week, you know, months ago. And, you know, I have it in my calendar where I stop and I kind of check, you know, what I was in Texas last week. I won't get into all the details, but, you know, I'm constantly trying to think about the very first thing I did when I woke up this morning as I communicated my calendar to, you know, Sammy, the video gentleman we've been working with who's been helping us shoot videos. And I was like, hey, man, I'm flying this day, that day. I'm going to be here this time, that time. You know, a lot of people, they're just really thinking about today and they haven't taken the time. I think if you know, the best life to live is a life by strategy. And I think that the reason why is because you're living with attention and you're producing the value for you and all the people around you with intention instead of with hope.
Yeah. I love that, dude. I love that. This is, well, you inspired me, bro. This is the first time I've ever had my calendar planned out to the end of the year. First time ever. I'll send it to you, dude. I created it in Canva. I'm so proud of it.
Hell yeah.
Everything's color coordinated. Everything's organized. Flights are booked. I've been the worst at like last minute, because what happens is then you overpay for things. You know, you allow the world to then to act upon you versus taking control and being an agent that's acting upon your life and creating the life that you want. And so I know that that stuff's true. And man, I keep getting excited to just get more and more clear, working on the strategy. I know you've been a big help to me and motivating me to be more strategic and take more action upon, living life by strategy. So again, appreciate you, brother. Appreciate the conversation this morning. It's good stuff. I hope that everybody else enjoyed it as much as I did.
Me too. Likewise.